Hi! I didn't see you there. I need that. Recently-ish, I tried on all the clothes in my closet, except clearly I missed a lot of things because I keep finding stuff that I could have included, like this, but you know what? Throughout that video, particularly in part dose, I discovered a lot of clothing that could use a lot of DIYing and updating, so I wouldn't think twice about wearing them and that I would be excited to wear them too. So we're gonna have another cozy craft time as I DIY my closet. Let's do this. Before we begin, it must be said that I am not a seamstress or a fashion designer or anything like the kind of person who would know what they're doing, you know? I learned how to do a straight stitch, zigzag stitch, and how to sew a button when I was like 11. And that's what we're running with. So to start off with, I had to deal with the things that were left on mine and Haley's daughter, Deborah, which is our dress form that we bought together at a garage sale, which had this top that I was making out of thrifted fabric, which was so dodgy. None of the sewing was straight and I didn't like the shape anymore. It's not something I think I would wear anymore. So I'm doing a big overhaul and creating a new top out of this top that I half finished. And if I finish it, I'll show you when I do, but I'm still working on it. And the other thing that Deborah had been wearing for months is this cardigan that used to be Sally's mum's. So when Sally was going through her closet, she picked out a bunch of stuff that she didn't want anymore and she wanted to get rid of. And this was among those things. And I thought with the shape of the cardigan as well as the fabric, that would just lend itself really nicely to becoming a wrap dress. And I think that's something that she would wear a lot more than clearly she thought she was going to wear this cardigan. So to start off with, I cut off the bottom hem plus a couple extra centimeters on top so that I would be able to turn that hem into the strip that you would use to tie the dress. I unpicked that seam that was joining the back panel with one of the side panels, so I had one shorter strip and one longer strip. Does that make sense? I hope that made sense. So then I put the cardigan back on my dress form, pinned the straps where I wanted them to be, and I hand sewed them down. And then on one side where the long strip would need to thread through to get to the outside of the dress, I unpicked some of that side seam, tied off the ends that I had unpicked, and then just hand sewed the raw edges down. So they looked nice and neat. Alright, so here's how it's looking so far. I checked the fit on Sally. Everything was looking good. We're a pretty similar size, so worked out great. So I left a bit of excess on the longer tie just in case it was too short. Yes, too short, but everything fit great. So now we just had to deal with the bottom hem. We were going back and forth and debating whether we wanted it to be still that low high kind of mullet of a hem because it did kind of lengthen the legs and look quite like classy, or if I cut off that little tail at the back so that everything was even and straight, which would look a little bit more modern. We ended up going with the short even hem because it looked quote.
It's kind of cute and flirty.
That is so flirty.
Okay, done.
And then using a colored pencil, I marked where I wanted to cut my hem, cut it, close the raw edge, ironed everything over, and then use a straight stitch to sew it all down. Alright, so now with that we had that finished, we could get onto the stuff from my closet. I had this black top that I showed in my closet part 2 video that I bought in high school, and like I said, I just don't wear it anymore and I can't see myself really wearing it. So I wanted something to update it a little bit more to, I don't know, the kind of style that I'm exploring right now. So I marked with wax a line down the middle of the shirt in the front, inside out. Then I sewed 2 straight stitches slightly to the left and slightly to the right of the middle of the shirt. So we end up with 2 center aligned straight stitches down the front. And you don't want to knot the ends when you sew them, just leave them loose and just sew a stitch down. Then on one side, either the top or the bottom of the shirt, you want to take the 2 bobbin threads and then on the other side take the 2 top threads and pull them, and you pull the shirt down and that's going to gather the fabric. So this should have been like a really easy quick fix, but I think a combination of the thread that I was using being really poor quality and also when I tied off the ends, which make sure you do that, those knots not being maybe like strong enough. When I went to try on the top just earlier today to give the like final end result footage showing try on, I ended up ripping the threads when I pulled down the top. So I did it again. This time using a blue thread that was like from a different company. I don't know if it's much better, and I ended up sewing 4 straight stitches, which might have been overkill. I probably could have just done 3. Then when I knotted the ends, I threaded each pair of threads. So like the 2 threads from the 1 stitch does that make sense, into a needle, and I tied a knot by dipping the needle into some of the fabric and then knotting the thread so that the fabric was kind of part of the knot. Then like triple knotted it, hopefully making the knots a little bit stronger. So hopefully that stays. All right, then we're gonna move on to a gray top that is exactly identical. It's also from Cotton On. It's literally the exact same top. And I didn't show it in my closet part 2 video because at the time that I was filming it, I had already put aside that top to want to DIY it and do stuff to it, but I just hadn't started yet. So I had a little plan in mind and I wanted to test out a technique first. So taking that bottom hem that I cut off of the cardigan that we turned into a dress, I practiced making what I think is called a lettuce hem, which is pretty much where you stretch the fabric, it needs to be stretchy fabric, lengthways, and sew a zigzag stitch going on and off the fabric along the edge to make this sort of like ruffled edge. It's been done on a lot of like crop tops by like fast fashion brands for a while now, and it worked great. I got the settings right for like the tension and how wide I wanted it and all that kind of stuff on my sewing machine. Then I unpicked the sleeves. I don't have gray thread, so I used this like light green thread, which is also what I used for the wrap dress. It's disguised just enough to be okay. I just had to make sure my sewing was straight enough to look presentable. And then I did the lettuce hem on the sleeves. Then I unpicked the neckline, which had this thin strip of fabric in it as part of the neckline to make it more thick and sturdy and stable, which I will save for later. If you want to do this to a similar top and it doesn't have an extra piece of fabric hiding in its neckline, you can just cut some off the bottom if it's long enough, or if it's too loose, cut some off the side. Make it work. And I also unpicked the bottom hem of the shirt. I then stretched them out and did that same zigzag stitch to make them all frilly on the neckline and at the bottom. Then I measured the center of each sleeve, so that will be like the top of each sleeve on your shoulder, and again marks them with colored pencil and sew 2 straight stitches along them to gather them like we did on the black top. Okay, so taking that piece of fabric that we stole from the neckline, which was already nice and neatly folded over from sitting in that neckline, I just sewed a straight stitch down the fabric to keep it closed and form this nice little rope of fabric. Then taking a scrap piece of fabric, this one was from the bottom of this tank top, I believe, I cut a rectangle just shy of, I don't know, less than a centimeter of the top and bottom of the shirt, and just slightly wider than our little ropes once they're doubled over. I kind of just eyeballed this, I didn't measure anything. Then after closing off the raw edges, I aligned the fabric onto the front of the shirt, making sure that the center of the strip is at the center of the shirt, and then pinned the front of the shirt to that rectangle of fabric. And you want to make sure that this rectangle is on the inside of your shirt, not on the outside. Then starting at the bottom of my shirt, at one side of the rectangle, you want to sew along the edge of the rectangle, along the top, and then go back down. And you don't want to sew close the bottom of the rectangle because we're making a channel for the ties to go in. Then to turn this big channel into 2 little channels, you want to, starting from the bottom of the shirt at the center, sew a line all along the center of the shirt, leaving about a centimeter or less at the top of the shirt, just enough for your rope to go through. You don't want to leave too much space because otherwise when you pull the ties down, they're just going to pull from the point of wherever you end your center stitch. So you don't want to have a big part of the top of your shirt left ungathered, it just won't look quite right. And then I put a safety pin through our little rope of fabric and threaded it through our channel. So the safety pin just helps you wriggle along and push along that thread of fabric through this channel till you get to the other side. As a finishing touch, after trying on the top, it was a little bit too loose, especially now that the neckline had been stretched out and was a lot wider. I wanted to just make it a little bit more fitted. So I took the top in about 3 centimeters on each side at the side seam. So yeah. Whew, all right, now for some quick fixes. I don't know if you can tell, but my voice is very tired, but we're powering through. Okay, so I have this pair of yellow pants that are really, really beautiful, but they're just a little bit too loose on me. So I already have some safety pins in them from the last time that I wore them. And being that this pair of pants are vintage, I want to make any changes I do completely reversible because there will come a time where I will not be the owner of these pants and I want them to be able to be restored to their original state. So first I measure how much needs to be taken in at the waist, which is altogether 10 centimeters. So at 2 points at the back of the pants, I take in about 5 centimeters. So after measuring where I take it in, I just pin a line and sew it down with a straight stitch. So now there'll be like 2 little flaps inside the pants that will sit flat whenever you wear them. And yeah, this only works if you don't have to take out like a really big amount of fabric because you will be pulling the fabric towards the back, and that means that the front is going to get pulled further out. So your pockets, for example, will end up more towards the side of your leg than the front. Yeah, and also if you have any back pockets as well, if you're doing this to jeans, if you take in too much, your back pockets will kind of jut out and become like a cup, if that makes sense, because you've pinched the fabric together. So yeah. Alright, and then I have this blue dress. This wasn't in a closet video because again, it had been put away in a separate pile of stuff to DIY. I got this back in 2016. It is secondhand, and I think the previous owner has altered the dress because one strap is shorter than the other strap. And then also the fit around the chest for me is a little bit loose. So all I did was unpick the longer strap and then sew it back down at an even length to the other strap. Then I put the dress on my dress form inside out, and because the dress has an invisible zipper on one side, it makes doing more alterations to it difficult. So to keep these alterations simple and again reversible, I just took the bodice in at 2 points on the back, kind of like what we did with the pants. Alright, and then these track pants, these just had elastics at the bottom that were just way too long. They'd gotten stretched out. The elastic had like broken and was too old. So all I had to do was cut them and tie them off. And that's it. Now for the grand finale, which is this white top. Again, I talked about this in my closet part 2 video, but it's just too loose for me. It's like a nice billowy top, but it's supposed to be off the shoulder, and because it's just like a size too big, it can't sit off the shoulder, otherwise it'll just fall off me. The nice billowy like sort of shape and length is nice, but it's not the kind of thing that I would really wear. But the good thing about it being looser and a billowy top means that we have a lot of fabric to work with. So without really much of a plan of what I was going to do, I put this top on my dress form and I marked the center of each section of the top. So it has a piece of elastic at the neckline at the front, a sleeve, another piece of elastic at the back, and then the sleeve. So I marked the center of each point. Then with those pins in place, I decided what I wanted to do, which was a more square neckline and then pull the back down to have like a V-shaped exposed back. Because again, the top was like a loose fit, but I wanted to turn it into a more fitted crop top, I pinned the side of the armpit to the armpit of my dress form to pull all the fabric here up to where it should be and where I want it to be. And then I noticed that the bottom of the top as well as the bottom of the sleeves all had this lovely scalloped edge that followed the pattern of the embroidery that was all over the fabric. And I was like, okay, well, I have to do something with that. So I cut off about 5 centimeters of the bottom of the shirt, closed the raw edge, and then I also ironed down the top, maybe like 1/2 centimeter of that strip. I also took off one of the side seams on that strip so that I just had one long strip. You'll know what I mean if you know what I mean. And yeah, folding over and ironing down that top little 1/2 centimeter is going to hide that raw edge. You'll see what we do with it later. Okay, so now we have to deal with the shape of the top. So to bring the armpit up, to make the sleeves more like puffy, and then also to bring the neckline and the back to how I wanted it to be, I measured how long I wanted that gap between the corner of the neckline and the armpit to be, and same for the back, which was 11 centimeters on the front and 14 centimeters on the back for each side. And then I did the same thing with the 2 straight stitches and then pulling the threads so that they were gathered until they were 11 centimeters or 14 centimeters, however long they were supposed to be. Then the top goes back on my dress form. I pinned the top in place how I want it, again with the neckline in the back, and I also pinned the side seams to the side of the top. Then I wrapped that strip that we cut from the bottom, which is going to become what I'm going to call the waistband. It doesn't actually go around my waist, but it's like acts kind of like a waistband. I don't know what else to call it. And I wrapped that around where I want to crop the top, which is right under the bust. I then gather the fabric as I want it to sit, and that's why it's important to pin the side seams to the side of your mannequin or your dress form so that you're not gathering the fabric at the front and then the side seam goes from being straight to going forward and forward or back and back and back. Yeah. Then using again a colored pencil, I mark on the fabric where the waistband sits and therefore where I need to cut the fabric so that it can be cropped. So after cutting off the excess fabric, I mark a line down the back of the shirt, the center point of where that dipped V will be, and I again do the 2 straight stitches and gather the fabric. Okay, so this is how the top is looking so far. We need a way to get this top on and off because I want that waistband to sit fitted around the ribs, but how are you going to like pull it off? Well, I don't want to put in a zipper, I don't want to put in elastic, so I need to speak quickly, the sun is setting. So how about we make this waistband functional? So what I did was cut a slit down the front of the top, starting from the bottom. And once we get about 1 centimeter away from the top elastic of the neckline, I go outwards to like a Y shape, 1 centimeter outward on each side, so that the middle of the front of the shirt will look like this. So all I have to do is close off the edges, hem the edges, and then I pin that top little triangle down by hand. Okay, we are almost done. Now we just need to attach the waistband to the top. I start by attaching the seam that connects these 2 strips of fabric into one long strip at the back where the gathering is. And then I tighten the strap so that it's fitted around to the front and it's the correct tautness of what it would be when it's tied. So then I pin the top to the waistband and then take the top off the mannequin and fill in all the parts that I didn't pin because I want to make sure that everything is down so I don't have to make stuff up while I'm sewing. Then I top stitch everything down with a straight stitch, working slowly in areas that have a lot of material. Okay, now for our grand reveals. This dress turned out pretty great. Sally says that she likes that the little ties wrap around so that you can't see them in the front. You can only see it in the back. I like that too. I feel like it looks a little bit professional and tailored and considered. Yeah. And then that bottom hem of the dress that we cut off, I did turn into a headband. I actually turned into 2 headbands so Sally and I can twin. And I love it so much. I've been wearing it a lot. I wore it in my video where I tried TikTok dances. And this black top is a lot of fun. I might even gather it again. By this point, I've gathered it like 4 different times because the thread kept snapping. Anyway, so that it's even tighter, like so it goes to a really like small point in the front. But otherwise, it's looking cute. This grey top is a lot of fun because I don't have actually any tops that look like this, even though this has been trendy for a long time. So this is nice and it's obviously more special because I had a say in how it fit and how it was made. But yeah, you can also wear it so that the sleeves are on the shoulder. I actually really like this. It has more of a sporty kind of look to it. And then you can also wear it the other way, back to front, so that it kind of has a similar look to how this top originally looked, except with the frilly edges. And you have a nice little gathered back. And again, you can do the same thing with the shoulders. With these yellow pants, I was so stupid. With the before footage, I forgot to like take out the safety pin so you can actually see how it didn't fit me. But anyway, now it fits me. The pants just look slightly less creased. This blue dress fits a lot better now. And then these track pants, I mean, I don't even need to show you a before and after. They look the same. I just cut off the elastic. Anyway, and the grand reveal of this white top. This one obviously has the most significant transformation because we almost totally reconstructed the top. I love it. It is fun. It is functional. It's again different to any other top that I own. I don't have a lot of this peasant style top. I only have this one and this one, but they're very different from this one. And the other fun thing is that you can wear it backwards as well. This probably won't work if you have a bigger chest because you would have had to allow for more fabric at the front, but for at least me and the way that this top fits me, it works. If you just tie the knot at the back really tight so that that extra billowing out fabric is pulled more tautly so that you have less of like a billowing out part over here on your back, then yeah, it fits really cute. And I really like the top worn both ways. So with that final chapter of this video, I will bid you adieu. I hope that you've had a fun little cozy craft time with me, and hopefully this has inspired you to take what you have already and spice them up so that you get excited about them again, whether that means just ironing something so that it's actually wearable, or just cutting off those excess threads, making things more neat, or completely transforming a piece that you have. Yeah, let me know what you think. There are more things that I can DIY and update from my closet. This wasn't all of them, so I will do that at some point in the future. Yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next week for another one.